Hello Reapers, my name's Seth and this is going to be a very brief tutorial talking to you about the Vanguard Class Gem Ability in Trove. So just before we get started, you're probably sitting there wondering how we're actually playing this character. I recorded all of this footage while the test server was live. This update is going to end up coming out in March, most likely around the 20th or later, and it's going to end up including the class as well, a bunch of other things. But anyways, the Class Gem Ability, obviously you're going to have 5,000 power rank to go to Uber 8, which isn't going to make that much of a difference if you end up actually having 10k power rank and going to U9. The only difference between these Everdark worlds is that U9 is going to end up giving you more Shaper stars rather than U8, which is going to end up giving you a little bit less. But you can just get your Class Gem ability out of U8 and it's not going to end up making a difference as far as the chance, the random chance of what elemental gem it's going to be, as well as the stats that you're trying to go for. So what you're trying to actually get on the Class Gem is obviously you're trying to get all three stats to be available right off the hop. The reason for this is because it means that when you end up leveling up the Class Gem ability, it's going to end up having more squares to its stats. So I'll kind of talk about that in a little bit here and kind of mention like what you want to have as the ideal stats for your Class Gem ability. Obviously, you're trying to get physical damage, crit damage, and crit hit. As you can see, my gem right here has a little too much roll on the physical damage, so hopefully I can get a little bit more lucky when it ends up going to the live server, but it's the test server, so I don't really care about it. What the Class Gem is going to end up doing is connecting with the final hit of a combo, reduces cooldown of all your abilities. So what that essentially means is that when you end up hitting an enemy with your third attack in melee form, your 1-2 uppercut, 1-2-3, 1-2-3, 1-2-3. On that uppercut, you're going to end up reducing the cooldown of both your ultimate ability and your number one. Your right click, of course, does not have a cooldown. And then when you're in ranged mode, you're going to end up reducing your cooldown on your fifth attack. So that's going to be 1-2-3-4-5, 1-2-3-4-5, 1-2-3-4-5. That bigger projectile that you're seeing right there. As soon as that ends up hitting an enemy, that's where suddenly it's going to be reducing the cooldown of your ultimate ability and your number one, which your number one is going to end up giving you an attack speed buff, while your number one in melee mode is going to end up just giving you raw movement speed, which is most of all is what this build is about, what the character is about, and why the Class Gem ability is actually essential to the character so that you can end up farming at an effective rate, just because your number one's going to give you that movement speed, which ultimately makes it so that you can actually use this character more viably in U9 and stuff. Now, unfortunately, as of right now, when this is on the test server anyways, the class is not very viable for Shadow Towers, unfortunately. We could possibly see this being a thing when the knockback gets removed from the game for the class's uppercut move, or maybe just with the ranged attack being not as disgusting. But as far as the Class Gem is concerned, my point being that it seems like what the developers kind of want us to do for the playability of the character is to be using your ultimate and toggling from range mode to melee mode back and forth, which kind of could end up making the character more viable in Shadow Towers if it would actually work in Shadow Towers. And because of it, again, the Class Gem ability is going to be essential because it's going to end up giving you more, you're going to be able to cast your abilities more often. So if we hop on over to the Gem Forge table right here, you can see these are what the game calls squares. I know that the shape itself is not a square, but we're just going to call it square for consistency's sake. It's pretty much just getting gems on your gems, right? Like it's more sockets to it. So what essentially is going to end up happening is if you have a gem that has already all three stats, at level 5, it's going to put one gem or one square on one of the stat slots randomly. Level 10, it's going to give another one, level 20, or so on and so forth, or maybe it's like level 15. I don't know when it is. It's like every 5 levels it ends up boosting up the stats on the gem, right? And then you're ultimately going to end up having all of these stats being random augment percent. So you're going to end up use gem augmenters to end up bringing up the percentile of all of these different abilities. But as you can see, I ended up rolling all 3 squares on physical damage, which is disappointing because normally this is what you want to see. This is what would be an ideal Class Gem just for the character, because you're going to want to go for 2 squares into physical, 1 square into crit damage, and then none into crit hit, because obviously you're going to have plenty of crit hit once you actually get this guy fully augmented with all his gems and level them up. Not to mention if you're in a club world that actually has like the fixtures that end up giving you more crit hit and stuff like that. This is what you want to see on your Class Gem ability. So in either way, folks, that's already pretty much it. It doesn't really add any different visuals to the attacks or anything like that, or maybe it does with the uppercut. Honestly speaking, I don't really know if that electric ability was always there, but in either case, it's still cool that we actually have a class gem ability that's very, very viable for the character and actually kind of forces the character into a combo role, which actually makes the way that you play this character a little different, because what you're going to be doing when you're in U9 essentially is now you're trying to get that third attack off on normal enemies rather than just doing your 1-2 combo, because you'll do a 1-2 and the enemy will most likely be dead if you're strong enough. So what you're trying to do is, let's just pretend that this raptor guy is an enemy. You're going to start your combo before you reach the enemy where it's 1-2-3, except I was way too far for that, but 1-2-3, 1-2-3, and do the third attack on the enemy. The reason why I'm kind of calculating this wrong is because I'm used to actually using my number 1 and having the extra movement speed. So 1-2-3, you use that to actually uppercut the enemy and then reduce the cooldown on your abilities and so on and so forth. But in either case, folks, thank you so much for watching. I just wanted to have a video that was more specifically talking about the class gem ability, so that you don't have to siphon through like hours of other videos trying to find out like where exactly is the class gem ability. It's a very, very good one though. Very cool that the class is fully rounded out, and in either case, cannot wait for this guy to come out on the live server in March. Thanks for watching though, folks. Sayonara and stay epic.